Look, nobody tells you that saving the galaxy starts with throwing a ball for a creature that could rip your throat out without breaking a sweat. But that's humanity for you, stumbling into interstellar incidents one act of stupidity at a time. Before we begin, YouTube shows me that 93% of you haven't subscribed yet. Subscribing is free, it really supports our community, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. The Galactic Interspecies Academy floated in the Andromeda sector like someone had decided to build a small moon and then forgot to add the gravitational pull. 200 species, countless biologies, and one shared cafeteria that somehow managed to serve food nobody was allergic to and everybody hated equally. The station orbited a binary star system positioned perfectly so that no single species could claim they owned the neighborhood. Sienna had been on the station for 3 months now, and she still hadn't gotten used to the cafeteria. Nothing quite prepares you for watching a methane breather argue with a silicon-based life form about who gets the last serving of what looks like luminescent gravel. The human exchange program had sent 20 students. Most of them stuck to the mammalian-compatible wings. Sienna, being Sienna, had immediately signed up for every cross-species course available. Which is how she ended up in interspecies behavioral studies on a morning that would later be referred to in Academy records as Incident Theta 9, and in the human dormitory as the day Sienna lost her entire mind. The classroom was one of those adaptable spaces that could shift atmosphere, gravity, and temperature by section. Instructor Quentala, imagine a praying mantis crossed with a very anxious librarian scaled up to 2 meters tall, was conducting her lecture from the climate-controlled zone that kept her chitin from cracking. Her 4 arms moved in precise, nervous gestures as she spoke. Today, we continue our examination of cultural integration protocols. Quentala's translator chip rendered her clicking speech into flat, academic standard. We are privileged, honored, and extremely careful to have representatives from the Kalmoth Collective joining us for observational studies. Sienna glanced at the 6 figures occupying the reinforced section of the classroom. The Kalmoth. Oh boy, the Kalmoth. Imagine evolution looked at the concept of apex predator and said, "You know what? Let's just go absolutely wild with this." Bipedal, sure, because apparently the universe had a template it liked, but that's where similarity to anything cute ended. They stood between 2 and 3 meters tall depending on age, covered in dense fur that ranged from deep charcoal to silver white, striped with patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Their faces were elongated, almost feline, but with crystalline eyes that could track movement in spectrums humans couldn't even see. And the teeth. Oh, the teeth. Retractable fangs that would make a saber-toothed tiger weep with envy. Their homeworld was a high-gravity nightmare where everything either killed you or made you stronger, and the Kalmoth had climbed to the top of that food chain and planted a flag. They were the muscle of the Galactic Council, the species you called when negotiation failed, and you needed someone to board a hostile vessel or clear out a pirate station. Mortality rate for their soldiers? Almost non-existent. Mortality rate for anyone fighting their soldiers? Let's just say insurance companies charged extra. The 6 in the classroom were juveniles, equivalent to human teenagers, brought in as part of some cultural exchange initiative that Sienna suspected was really about teaching them not to eat their future allies. They sat in their designated zone, looking profoundly bored. Well, 5 of them looked bored. The 6th, Ulvarn, according to the nameplate on his gravitational harness, looked like he was contemplating every possible escape route, while simultaneously calculating which student would be the most challenging hunt. Quentala droned on about mutual respect frameworks and communication accommodation strategies, which was Academy speak for "please don't let the species with opposing biologies murder each other." The call-moth cubs, and yes, the Academy insisted on calling them cubs, even though each one could tear through a security door, shifted restlessly. Ulvarn's crystalline eyes tracked a flying insectoid student crossing the room. His haunches tensed. Sienna watched his pupils dilate. The key to successful integration, Quentala continued, oblivious, lies in understanding that what one species perceives as friendly, another might interpret as... The training sphere rolled off the edge of Quentala's demonstration table. It was a small thing, maybe the size of a softball, used for some kind of coordination exercise. It hit the floor with a soft thunk and began rolling in that sad, purposeless way that inanimate objects do when physics takes over. Every single call-moth head snapped toward it. Oh, thought Sienna, that's a predator response. Ulvarn's eyes locked onto the sphere like it had personally insulted his ancestors. His tail, thick, muscular, tipped with a tuft of fur, began to twitch. The other students noticed. The smart ones started slowly moving away. Quentala, still lecturing, did not notice. The sphere rolled to a stop near Sienna's desk. She looked at it, looked at Ulvarn, whose entire body had gone tense, every muscle coiled like a spring. Looked at the sphere again. Sienna's brain, that wonderful organ that had gotten her through orbital mechanics and xenobiology, but apparently took coffee breaks during common sense, made a decision. She reached down, picked up the sphere, and tossed it down the corridor. Time, as they say, slowed down. Ulvarn moved, not like a student, not like a person, like lightning given fur and fangs. He was a blur of motion, crossing 15 meters in maybe 2 seconds, claws extended for traction. He pounced on the sphere with the kind of precision that spoke to millions of years of evolutionary fine-tuning, then sat there, the sphere between his massive paws, looking absurdly pleased with himself. The classroom was silent. That special kind of silent that happens right before someone screams. Ulvarn looked at Sienna. Sienna looked at Ulvarn. His tail was wagging. Actually wagging, sweeping back and forth across the floor. "Good boy," Sienna said, because apparently her brain was fully committed to this insanity. Ulvarn picked up the sphere in his jaws. Carefully, she noticed, not crushing it, and loped back to her. He dropped it at her feet and sat, looking up at her with those crystalline eyes that probably saw into her soul and found it severely lacking in survival instincts. "Oh," Sienna said. "Oh, you want to play?" She picked up the sphere. Every other student in the room was frozen, staring at her like she'd just volunteered to juggle antimatter. Quentala's mandibles had locked open in what was probably the insectoid equivalent of a heart attack. Sienna threw the sphere again. Ulvarn's tail wagged harder. He took off. A missile of fur and death retrieved the sphere, brought it back. "Who's a terrifying apex predator?" Sienna cooed, scratching behind what she hoped was his ear, and not some kind of sensory organ she was violating. "You are! Yes, you are!" Ulvarn made a sound. It was deep, rumbling, somewhere between a purr and a growl, and it made the windows vibrate. The other 5 call-moth cubs were watching now, heads tilted in identical expressions of confusion. "Sienna!" one of her classmates hissed. A centaurian with excellent survival instincts. "What are you doing?" "Playing fetch," Sienna said, throwing the sphere again. "Apparently." Ulvarn bounded after it. And this time when he came back, one of the other cubs, Arnvux, the largest, followed him, watching with intense curiosity. Quentala finally found her voice. "Students, evacuate! Evacuate the classroom immediately!" "But they're fine," Sienna protested, as Ulvarn dropped the sphere again, now slightly dented from enthusiastic jaws. "Look, he's having fun." "That is a qualmoth juvenile. Their species has a 98% successful hunt rate. You are playing with a predator?" "A bored predator," Sienna pointed out. She threw the sphere again. Ulvarn chased it. Arnvux joined in this time, the two of them playfully shouldering each other out of the way. "Now, he's an entertained predator. Big improvement, if you ask me." The classroom had cleared out in record time. Even the students in the high-gravity section had found motivation to move quickly. Only Quentala remained, all four arms clutching various communication devices, probably calling everyone from security to the council itself. Sienna threw the sphere again. All 6 cubs went for it this time, a tumbling mass of fur and competitive snarling that would have been terrifying if it wasn't so obviously playful. Ulvarn emerged victorious, sphere held high, and pranced back to Sienna like he'd just won the galactic championship. "Good job," Sienna told him. And he made that rumbling sound again, leaning into her hand when she scratched behind his auditory ridge. The door burst open. 3 qualmoth adults entered, moving with that same predatory grace but tempered with age and discipline. They wore harnesses marked with symbols Sienna couldn't read, probably military or handler designations. The one in front, scarred, grizzled, with fur that had gone silver at the muzzle, stopped dead when he saw the scene. 6 cubs, clustered around one human student. Said human student, scratching Ulvarn's chin while the cub's eyes were half closed in contentment. A training sphere, thoroughly mangled, at her feet. Arnvux attempting to present her with what looked like a broken data tablet he'd found somewhere. "What?" the lead qualmoth said in a voice like grinding rock, "is happening here?" Quentala's translator was working overtime, her clicks coming so fast they almost blurred together. "Zunrak, thank the cosmic void you're here. The human initiated unauthorized play behavior with Ulvarn, and now they're all fixated on her, and I tried to stop it, but she just kept throwing the sphere and—" Zunrak held up one massive paw. Silence fell. He looked at Sienna, then at the cubs, then back at Sienna. "You played fetch," he said slowly, "with a qualmoth cub." "Yes," Sienna said. It came out as more of a question than she'd intended. "For how long?" Sienna checked her chronometer. About 15 minutes." One of the other handlers made a choking sound. Zunrak's tail was doing something complicated, twitching in patterns that Sienna's xenobiology courses hadn't covered. "Ulvarn," Zunrak said, his voice dropping into what was clearly a command tone. "Return to formation." Ulvarn looked at Zunrak, looked at Sienna, pressed closer to Sienna's leg, and made a defiant huffing sound. The silence that followed could have had its own gravity well. One of the handlers whispered, "He just refused a direct command." "Noted," Zunrak said, his voice carefully neutral. He approached slowly, non-threateningly, which on a qualmoth still looked fairly threatening. "Human student, I am Zunrak, primary handler for these juveniles. May I ask what possessed you to engage in play behavior with a species you've been warned is extremely dangerous?" "He looked bored," Sienna said, which was the truth. "And the sphere rolled over, and his whole body language changed, and I just sort of threw it. Then he brought it back, and, well." She gestured at the 6 cubs now sitting around her in a semicircle. "Here we are." Zunrak's crystalline eyes studied her for a long moment. You do understand that Ulvarn could kill you in approximately 3 seconds if he chose to. Sure, Sienna said, but he doesn't want to kill me. He wants me to throw the sphere again. She picked it up. 6 pairs of eyes tracked it with laser focus. See? She tossed it gently down the corridor. All 6 cubs exploded into motion, a chaotic scramble of competitive playfighting and speed. Ulshira emerged with the sphere this time, looking enormously proud of herself. Zunrak watched them return, watched them drop the sphere at Sienna's feet and sit, tails wagging in synchronization. Well, he said finally, this is unprecedented. Is that bad? Sienna asked. I genuinely do not know, Zunrak admitted. We need to convene an emergency meeting, immediately. The Academy administrators, the Kalmoth cultural liaison, possibly the council itself. Because I played fetch? Because, Zunrak said, gesturing with one scarred paw at the 6 cubs who were now completely ignoring him in favor of staring hopefully at Sienna. You have apparently triggered a pack-bonding response that our species hasn't displayed with an alien in recorded history. And because tomorrow, these cubs have another scheduled class session. He paused, his expression unreadable. I suspect, he continued, that it is going to be very, very interesting. The emergency meeting, Sienna would learn later, lasted 6 hours and involved 17 different species representatives, 4 translators, and at least 2 diplomatic incidents. The Kalmoth Collective sent an urgent communiqué. The human ambassador got involved. Quentala filed a formal incident report that was approximately 30 pages long. But that night, as Sienna lay in her quarters staring at the ceiling, all she could think about was Ulvarn's tail wagging and the pure, uncomplicated joy of watching a bored teenager, regardless of species, finally get to play. Her roommate, Flimbar, a nervous avian species who slept hanging from a perch, rustled his feathers in the darkness. You know you're completely insane, right? He chirped softly. Yeah, Sienna said. I'm getting that impression. They're going to make you go back tomorrow. Probably. The cubs are going to remember you. Definitely. A long pause. The soft hum of the station's life support filled the silence. You're smiling, Flimbar observed. I can hear it in your voice. Sienna was definitely smiling. Go to sleep, Flim, she said. But sleep was a long time coming, because somewhere in the back of her mind, she was already wondering what would happen when 6 apex predator cubs saw her again. She had a feeling she was about to find out. The next morning arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova, which is to say, Sienna woke up to Flimbar shrieking in 3 different octaves. You have messages, he squawked, hanging upside down from his perch and vibrating with anxiety. 38 messages, from administrators, from the Kalmoth Liaison Office, from someone whose title translates to Keeper of Species Relations and Prevention of Catastrophic Diplomatic Failures. Sienna, that's not even a real job title. They invented it just to send you a message. Sienna groaned and pulled her pillow over her head. What time is it? Time for you to explain to multiple galactic officials why you decided to play catch with a walking murder machine. It was fetch, not catch. There's a difference. Oh, forgive me for not understanding the nuances of your death wish. Flimbar's feathers rustled with indignation. I shared a perch with you for 3 months, thinking you were relatively sane. Past tense noted, Sienna muttered, finally dragging herself upright. Her datapad was indeed blinking with an alarming number of notifications. She scrolled through them, watching her academic career flash before her eyes in the form of increasingly urgent administrative speak. The gist was simple. Report to interspecies behavioral studies at the normal time. Do not engage with the qualmoth cubs. Remain in designated human safe zones. Under no circumstances should she repeat yesterday's behavior. Well, Sienna said, at least they're not expelling me. The day is young, Flimbar said darkly. Sienna arrived at the classroom 10 minutes early, which was unusual for her, but seemed appropriate given that she'd apparently caused an interstellar incident. The room had been rearranged. The qualmoth section now had additional barriers, reinforced transparent panels that could probably withstand a small explosion. Security monitors had been installed in every corner. And standing near the door, looking like she'd aged a decade overnight, was instructor Quentala. "Sienna," the instructor said, her mandibles clicking in what the translator rendered as profound weariness. "We need to establish clear protocols." "I'm really sorry about yesterday," Sienna started, but Quentala raised one of her 4 arms. "The apology is noted but irrelevant. What's done is done. The qualmoth cubs are scheduled to arrive in 5 minutes. You will remain in the human-designated section. You will not make eye contact. You will absolutely not engage in any play behavior. Am I understood?" "Completely," Sienna said. Quentala studied her with compound eyes that saw too much. "I've been teaching at this academy for 18 cycles. I've handled atmospheric breaches, gravity failures, and an incident involving combustible spores that we don't talk about. Yesterday was the first time I genuinely thought I was going to watch a student die in my classroom. But I didn't die. A fact that defies statistical probability and common sense." Quentala's translator added a resigned sigh. "Just, please, sit in your designated area. Let me attempt to salvage what remains of this cultural exchange program." The other students filtered in, giving Sienna looks that ranged from awe to horror. The centaurian from yesterday sat as far from her as physically possible. A gelatinous species she'd never spoken to before oozed over to ask if it was true she'd domesticated a qualmoth, which was both flattering and deeply inaccurate. Then the door opened, and Zunrak entered with the 6 cubs. Sienna's breath caught. They looked like apex predators being forced to attend school when they'd rather be literally anywhere else. Ulvarn was in the lead, his crystalline eyes scanning the room with that unsettling predator focus. Those eyes found Sienna. His entire body language changed. Ears forward, tail up, that same coiled energy from yesterday. He made a sound, something between a chirp and a rumble, that the translator didn't even attempt to interpret. "Ulvarn," Zunrak said firmly, "maintain formation." Ulvarn ignored him completely. He bounded across the classroom, straight past the reinforced barriers that someone had forgotten to activate, directly toward Sienna. "Oh no," Quentala whispered. "Oh yes," Sienna whispered back, because Ulvarn had just sat down next to her desk, exactly like a very large, very dangerous dog waiting for his owner to come home. Then Arnvux followed, then Ulshira, then Zaltek, Kunvala, and Fimreth, one by one, until all 6 qualmoth cubs were clustered around Sienna's desk like she was the sun, and they were the world's deadliest planets. The classroom went silent. That special kind of silent that happens when everyone is holding their breath and praying to their respective deities. Quentala tried first. "Cubs, return to your designated area. This is not proper protocol." 6 tails swished in synchronized dismissal. Nobody moved. Zunrak stepped forward, and now his voice carried the weight of command, the kind that probably sent soldiers into battle. Ulvarn, Arnvux, all of you. Formation. Now. Ulvarn looked at Zunrak, then looked at Sienna, then deliberately lay down at her feet and put his head on his paws. The message was clear. Not moving, don't care. This is where I want to be. The other cubs followed suit. Well, Zunrak said after a moment, this is problematic. Problematic was putting it mildly. The other students had evacuated to the far side of the room, clustering together like prey animals that had suddenly realized they were sharing space with their natural predators. Quentala was cycling through colors that Sienna was pretty sure indicated various stages of panic. And Sienna was sitting very still, while 6 creatures that could tear through starship hulls had decided her immediate vicinity was the only acceptable place to be. Arnvux, apparently deciding that sitting wasn't enough, dropped something at Sienna's feet. She looked down. It was a data pad. A mangled, clearly broken data pad that looked like it had been enthusiastically murdered. "Did you bring me a present?" Sienna asked. Arnvux's tail wagged. Actually wagged, this massive apex predator looking absurdly pleased with himself for bringing her electronic corpses. "Do not," Quentala said urgently. "Do not praise that behavior. Do not reinforce the pack bonding. Do not." "Good job," Sienna told Arnvux, because apparently she was committed to chaos. "That's a very dead datapad. Well done." Arnvux made a rumbling sound that vibrated through the floor. Ulvarn looked jealous. Zunrak approached slowly, carefully, moving like someone navigating a minefield. "Sienna, may I speak with you?" "Sure," Sienna said, "though I'm not sure I can move without stepping on someone." "Remain where you are." Zunrak crouched, bringing himself closer to eye level, though he still loomed. "What you did yesterday playing with Ulvarn, do you understand what happened? I threw a ball and he brought it back? You triggered a pack bonding protocol that our species hasn't engaged in with aliens, possibly ever." Zunrak's voice was patient, like he was explaining orbital mechanics to a child. "Among Kalmoth, play behavior between adults and cubs is how we teach hunting, strategy, pack dynamics. When you played fetch with Ulvarn, you didn't just entertain him. You positioned yourself as a pack leader, a teacher, an elder." Sienna blinked. "But I'm 23. Age is irrelevant. Behavior is everything. You engaged him in the way our huntmasters do. And now," he gestured at the 6 cubs who were watching this conversation with rapt attention, "they have decided you are their instructor. Not Quentala. Not me. You. That's insane. That's instinct." Zunrak's tail twitched. "For what it's worth, this is causing significant debate among my people. The Kalmoth Collective is currently in emergency session discussing whether this is a breakthrough in interspecies relations or a catastrophic breach of tradition." "Which do you think it is?" Sienna asked. Zunrak looked at the cubs, then back at her. "I think these juveniles have been miserable since they arrived at the academy. Our traditional education methods don't translate well to a peaceful environment. They're bored, frustrated, and homesick. Yesterday was the first time I've seen them genuinely happy in weeks." He paused, something shifting in his crystalline eyes. "But I also think you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." Before Sienna could respond, the door opened again. A reptilian figure entered, scales gleaming with what was probably expensive polish, wearing diplomatic regalia that screamed, "I am very important, and you should be impressed." "Diplomat Veshkarn," Quentala said, her relief palpable. "Thank the cosmic streams. Perhaps you can help resolve this situation." Veshkarn surveyed the room with cold, calculating eyes. When he spoke, his voice dripped with the kind of authority that came from never being told no. I have reviewed yesterday's incident reports. This is clearly a case of human recklessness, endangering a carefully structured cultural exchange. With respect, Zunrak said, standing, the cubs were never in danger. I was referring to the danger they pose, not to them. Veshkarn's forked tongue flickered. The Kalmoth are valued military allies. Their training regimen is sacred to their culture. This domestication attempt undermines their warrior heritage. Nobody's being domesticated, Sienna protested. We just played fetch. You corrupted their instincts with weakness. Ulvarn growled. Actually, growled, a sound that made the windows rattle and several students whimper. He hadn't moved from Sienna's feet, but his teeth were visible now, and his eyes were locked on Veshkarn. Fascinating, Zunrak murmured. He perceives you as a threat to his pack leader. I am a council-appointed diplomat, Veshkarn snapped. I will not be intimidated by a juvenile. Then I suggest you stop threatening his chosen instructor, Zunrak said mildly. Because, if you haven't noticed, you're currently being evaluated as potential prey by 6 very interested predators. All 6 cubs were staring at Veshkarn now, heads tilted, bodies tense. It was the kind of attention that usually preceded something becoming lunch. Veshkarn took a step back, trying to maintain dignity. This situation is unacceptable. I am calling for a formal evaluation. The cubs will undergo a traditional Kalmoth trial. If they have been weakened by this human's influence, it will become apparent. And when it does, this exchange program will be terminated, and proper training methods will resume. A trial? Sienna asked. What kind of trial? The hunt simulation, Zunrak said quietly, in the Academy's biodome. It's designed to test juvenile Kalmoth in conditions matching our homeworld. Most cubs don't pass it on their first attempt. And if they fail? Then Veshkarn gets his way, and you're removed from any contact with them. They'll be sent back to traditional training. Zunrak's voice was neutral, but something in his posture suggested he wasn't thrilled about this either. When is this trial? Sienna asked. 3 days, Veshkarn said with evident satisfaction. That gives you time to prepare them, if you think your play methods have any merit. Though I suspect we both know how this will end. He swept out of the room, leaving a wake of smug certainty. Sienna looked down at Ulvarn, who was still pressed against her leg, watching her with those crystalline eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. So, no pressure or anything. You don't have to do this, Zunrak said. You could walk away. Let us handle their training. Could I, though? Sienna gestured at the 6 cubs who showed absolutely no signs of moving. Because they seem pretty committed to this whole pack thing. Fair point. Quentala, who had been silent during the exchange, finally spoke. If you're going to do this, if you're genuinely going to prepare them for a trial that breaks experienced juveniles, then you need to understand what you're up against. The hunt simulation is not a game. It's designed to push them to their absolute limits. Then I guess, Sienna said, reaching down to scratch behind Ulvarn's auditory ridge, feeling him lean into her touch. We'd better get started. Flimbar, when she told him that, evening, nearly fell off his perch. You're going to train them? You, who yesterday didn't even know Kalmoth had pack instincts? You're going to prepare 6 apex predators for a trial that their own species considers brutal? When you put it that way, it sounds bad, Sienna admitted. Because it is bad. It's beyond bad. It's catastrophically terrible. But they're counting on me. Flimbar made a sound like wind through broken branches. You're going to get yourself killed. Or worse, you're going to fail them, and they'll be sent away, and you'll have to live with that. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I'm your roommate, not your cheerleader. Someone has to maintain a grip on reality. But his tone softened. Though I suppose if anyone could accidentally revolutionize interspecies relations through sheer stubborn stupidity, it would be you. That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Don't let it go to your head. Sienna lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about 6 cubs who had decided she was worth following, thinking about a trial that could break them, thinking about a reptilian diplomat who wanted to prove that human methods were worthless. 3 days. She had 3 days to prepare them for something she didn't understand, using methods she was making up as she went along. Somewhere in the station, 6 Qualmoth cubs were probably sleeping, dreaming whatever apex predators dreamed. She really hoped they dreamed of success. Because failure wasn't an option she was willing to consider. Training 6 apex predators turned out to be less inspiring sports movie montage and more controlled chaos with occasional moments of terror. Sienna started on day 1 with what she knew: human team-building exercises. The kind of stuff she'd done at summer camp back on Earth, adapted for creatures that could accidentally kill her if they sneezed wrong. The Academy had granted her access to one of the smaller training facilities, probably because nobody else wanted to be within 100 meters of what was happening. Zunrak observed from a safe distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "All right," Sienna announced, standing before 6 very attentive predators. "We're going to play a game called Capture the Flag." Ulvarn tilted his head, crystalline eyes curious. 2 teams. You have to work together to get the flag from the other team's base and bring it back to yours. No serious injuries, and nobody eats the flag. She divided them. Ulvarn, Ulshira, and Fimreth against Arnvux, Zaltek, and Kunvala. What followed was simultaneously beautiful and absolutely horrifying. They were fast, faster than anything Sienna had seen outside of combat footage. They moved like liquid death, all coordination and predatory grace. But they were also competing with each other more than cooperating. Ulvarn would make a brilliant flanking move, only to have Ulshira undercut him to grab the glory. Arnvux physically shouldered Zaltek out of the way. "Stop!" Sienna called after the 3rd round devolved into a wrestling match. "What are you doing?" "Winning," Ulvarn said through his translator, sounding confused about why this was even a question. "You're not winning. You're just fighting each other. The other team already has your flag." 6 heads swiveled. Sure enough, while they'd been busy establishing dominance, Kunvala had slipped past completely unnoticed and scored. "Oh," Ulvarn said. "Yeah. Oh." Sienna sat down cross-legged, and they all gathered around her like very large, very dangerous students. "Here's the thing. You're all individually incredible. Any one of you could probably ace this trial alone. But that's not what's being tested, is it?" She looked at Zunrak, who gave a small nod. "The trial is designed for a pack, not 6 individuals. A pack. That means trusting each other, supporting each other, sometimes letting someone else take the win because it's better for the group." "That is not how Qualmoth train," Arnvux rumbled. "I know, but maybe it could be." Sienna stood, brushing off her pants. "Again, but this time, I want you to actually work together. Talk to each other. Make a plan." They tried again. It was better. Not great, but better. Ulvarn actually passed to Ulshira when she had a better angle. Arnvux provided cover instead of rushing in for personal glory. By the end of day 1, they'd started to understand. Day 2, Sienna introduced problem-solving under pressure. She set up obstacle courses that required multiple cubs to complete. Weight-triggered platforms that needed 2 bodies. Walls too high for one to climb, but easy with a boost from a teammate. Puzzles that needed different perspectives. The cubs hated it at first. Qualmoth apparently believed that any obstacle you couldn't overcome through sheer force and determination wasn't worth overcoming. But Sienna was patient, and more importantly, she made it fun. When they succeeded, she celebrated. When they failed, she helped them analyze what went wrong. "You're teaching them to think like humans," Zunrak observed during a break. "I'm teaching them to think like a team," Sienna corrected. "Humans don't have a monopoly on cooperation." "No, but you've built your entire civilization on it. Qualmoth culture values individual prowess. And that's great for single combat. But they're not going into single combat, are they?" Zunrak's tail twitched in what might have been amusement. "The traditionalists are going to hate this?" "The traditionalists can file a complaint after we pass the trial." Day 3 arrived too quickly. The morning of the trial, Sienna gathered the cubs one final time. They sat in a circle, these massive predators who'd somehow decided she was worth listening to. "I know you're nervous," she said. "I'm nervous too. But I've watched you these past few days, and you know what I've seen? A pack. A real pack. You've got Ulvarn's speed, Arnvux's strength, Ulshira's tactical thinking, Zaltek's endurance, Quinvala's stealth, and Fimreth's adaptability. Separately, you're dangerous. Together, you're unstoppable." Ulvarn leaned forward. "What if we fail?" "Then we fail together," Sienna said simply. "But I don't think you will. You're ready." She wasn't sure if she believed it, but they needed to believe it. And sometimes that was enough. The biodome was a nightmare made manifest, which was apparently the point. Sienna stood in the observation deck, watching as the environmental systems transformed the massive enclosed space into a replica of the Qualmoth homeworld. Gravity increased until she could feel it in her bones, even through the reinforced glass. The temperature spiked. Vegetation erupted from hidden floor panels, all thorns and poison and aggressive survival instincts. Somewhere in that artificial hell, preybots were being released, each one programmed to fight back. Faculty members crowded the observation deck. Students from a dozen species pressed against viewing screens. And standing front and center, looking insufferably smug, was diplomat Vesh Karn. "The trial will last 2 hours, Zunrak explained, his voice tight with tension. "The cubs must hunt and neutralize 12 prey bots. The bots are armed with stun capabilities and environmental weapons. They're designed to test everything: speed, strength, endurance, tactical thinking, and pain tolerance." "Pain tolerance?" Sienna repeated. "The bots fight back. Injuries are expected." Zunrak's claws flexed unconsciously. Most juveniles take multiple attempts to pass. Some never do. How many attempts have these cubs had? This is their first. Fantastic. No pressure at all. The cubs entered the biodome through a reinforced airlock, and even from the observation deck, Sienna could see them tense as the gravity hit. They spread out immediately, falling into individual hunting patterns, exactly what she'd been trying to train out of them. "They're reverting to instinct," Quentala observed, mandibles clicking nervously. "Give them time," Sienna said, though her heart was hammering. The first preybot appeared, a multi-legged nightmare bristling with sensors and weaponry. Ulvarn spotted it, tensed to attack alone, then stopped. Sienna could see him thinking. could see the moment her training clicked in. He made a low call. The other cubs responded, shifting positions. They'd practiced this, the basic flanking pattern, but doing it under pressure with adrenaline flooding their systems was different. Arnvux came in from the left, drawing the bot's attention. Ulshira circled right. Ulvarn waited, patient, until the bot turned to track Arnvux, exposing its sensor cluster. Then he struck, fast and precise, while Zaltek came in from behind to finish it. First bot down, 11 to go. Adequate, Veshkarn said, though his tone suggested he'd swallowed something sour. The second and third bots went down similarly. The cubs were communicating, actually working together. And it was working. Sienna felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. Then Bot 4 released a swarm attack. 3 bots simultaneously, emerging from different directions, coordinated in a way that made Sienna's stomach drop. This was the real test, the thing that broke most cubs on their first attempt. The pack scattered. Instinct overrode training, survival trumped strategy. Fimreth took a stun blast to the shoulder and went down. Kunvala was pinned between 2 bots, desperately dodging. "They're failing," Veshkarn said with evident satisfaction, "exactly as predicted. Human methods are insufficient for Kalmoth trials." "Shut up," Sienna whispered, pressing her hands against the glass. Come on, remember what we practiced." Ulvarn was the first to recover. He could have gone for the easy kill, the bot closest to him. Instead, he charged toward Kunvala, drawing fire, giving her space to escape. Arnvux followed his lead, and suddenly they weren't 6 individuals anymore. They were a unit. Ulshira coordinated the counterattack, her tactical mind cutting through the chaos. She positioned them in a formation they'd practiced, the one Sienna had adapted from human military tactics. Overlapping fields of attack, mutual support, nobody left exposed. The 3 bots went down in under a minute, coordinated strikes from multiple angles. Fimreth was back on his feet, shaking off the stun. They regrouped, and Sienna could see something had shifted. They weren't just following training anymore. They believed in it. Bots 5 through 9 fell to increasingly sophisticated pack tactics. The cubs adapted on the fly, covered each other's weaknesses, played to individual strengths while maintaining group cohesion. It was beautiful and terrifying, watching apex predators learn to be more than the sum of their parts. Bot 10 went down, Bot 11. 1 left. "They might actually pass," Quentala whispered, sounding shocked. The final bot emerged, and Sienna's blood went cold. It was massive, easily twice the size of the others, bristling with weapons and heavy armor. This wasn't standard. This was the boss level that cubs weren't expected to face on their first trial. "That's not regulation," Zunrak growled. "Who authorized the ultimate level bot?" Veshkarn's expression was carefully neutral. Too neutral. The bot opened fire, a spray of stun rounds that sent the cubs scrambling for cover. Arnvux tried to charge it head-on and got blasted back. Ulshira's tactical positioning meant nothing against something that could suppress an entire area. They were pinned down, separated, and the bot was advancing. Sienna watched Ulvarn, saw him crouched behind inadequate cover, saw his ears flatten in what she'd learned was frustration. He could see his packmates struggling, could see Kunvala limping from a glancing hit, could see Fimreth trying and failing to flank something that had sensors in every direction. And she saw the moment he made his choice. Instead of going for glory, instead of trying to be the hero, Ulvarn did something no Kalmoth juvenile had probably ever done in a trial. He retreated, pulled back to where Ulshira was pinned, protected her long enough for her to assess the situation. Then they moved together, gathering the scattered pack. 6 cubs, battered and stunned but together, faced down a bot designed to break them. Ulshira made the plan. Arnvux and Zaltek would draw fire from the front, while Kunvala used her stealth to get underneath. Ulvarn and Fimreth would hit the flanks simultaneously. Ulshira herself would wait for the opening and strike the sensor core. It was complex. It required trust. It required every single one of them to do their part perfectly. They executed it flawlessly. The bot went down in a shower of sparks and grinding metal, and 6 Kolmoth cubs stood over it, heaving with exhaustion, bleeding from minor wounds, and absolutely victorious. The observation deck erupted. Species that Sienna hadn't even known were watching started cheering. Quentala was clicking so rapidly, her translator gave up. Zunrak's tail was doing something complicated that she was pretty sure meant pride. Veshkarn was silent, jaw clenched, clearly swallowing whatever objection he'd prepared. The cubs looked up at the observation deck, found Sienna, and every single one of them had their tails wagging. 2 weeks later, Sienna walked across campus with her usual escort of 6 massive predators who acted like puppies whenever she was around. The other students had stopped panicking. Mostly. They'd learned that as long as they didn't threaten Sienna, the cubs were perfectly content to ignore them. Flimbar had stopped complaining about his roommate's death wish and started bragging that he lived with the human who revolutionized Kolmoth training methods. The Kolmoth Collective had sent an official delegation to study her techniques. Veshkarn had been quietly reassigned to a different sector, and Sienna had been offered a formal position as an interspecies cultural liaison, specializing in collaborative learning methods. "You know this is insane, right?" Flimbar chirped, walking beside her while 6 apex predators trailed behind like the world's most dangerous parade. "You accidentally changed an entire species' approach to education because you threw a ball." "Not just any ball," Sienna corrected, pulling out a training sphere. 6 heads immediately tracked it with laser focus. The perfect ball, she threw it. All 6 cubs took off, a chaotic scramble of competitive play and sibling rivalry, tails wagging as they chased something simple and joyful. Ulvarn emerged victorious, brought the sphere back, dropped it at her feet, and sat with an expression of such pure contentment that it made her heart ache. "Good boy," Sienna said, scratching behind his auditory ridge. "All of you. Good pack." Because, sometimes, the galaxy didn't need another warrior tradition or diplomatic protocol or carefully structured cultural exchange. Sometimes it just needed someone willing to play fetch with a bored teenager and see where that simple act of connection led. Turned out, it led pretty far. And yeah, humanity could claim that as a win.